Hi, Jim Ziegler, the Alpha Dog, and we've got one tremendous show for you today. The subject, manufacturer overreach. Have the manufacturers gone too far? Now, today, we've all vowed that we're not going to pick on Ford quite as much. I mean, there's other manufacturers are also exercising overreach.
Small technical error.
Farley's got someone messing with our tech.
Thought it was me.
Okay. Okay. Our guest panelist today, the president of the Florida Automobile Dealers Association, the distinguished Ted Smith, Esquire. Hello, Ted.
How are you, Jim? Good to be with you, man.
Glad to have you. You know, this is the first time having you on the show, and I'm sure it won't be the last. We've got a lot of things to talk about.
Yes, indeed. I can't wait to participate.
Okay, and one of my old friends, gentleman that I have interacted with and worked for many times, Massachusetts Auto Dealers Association Executive Vice President, Bob Okoniewski. Hey, Bob, how you doing?
Good afternoon, everyone. How are we all doing?
Hey, Bob, you know, I've been calling you Bob forever. I see you got Robert down there. Am I going to call you Robert or Bob?
Bob is great.
Yeah, because Bob is sort of personable, you know, like you could grill hamburgers with you or something, you know?
Bobby, no.
You got it. And one of the most brilliant personages in the car business, executive consultant, my friend Jennifer Briggs. Hi, kid.
Hey, Jim. How are you doing today?
I'm excited about this show. I'll tell you.
I know. We're going to see if we can get my ears to turn as red as my hair today.
Pineapple. Okay. And
on camera.
Executive consultant, strategy with Jason Harris. How's Nashville?
Beautiful. Nice 80 degrees outside. So.
Okay, so you just recently moved here from Canada, so you're an American expatriate returned home. True.
I'm back at home. Feels great.
Glad you're here. And the queen of BDC. If it has anything to do with Business Development Center, this woman is the ultimate expert, Bobbie Herron.
Thank you. Hey, everybody. I'm excited for this show today.
Hey, I saw that announcement on your Facebook page. Yeah, you kept that a secret from me for a while.
Are you talking about the boyfriend?
Yeah, your new boyfriend. Tell him you've got friends who are heavily armed.
Only in my life.
Oh, he knows.
Only in my life does me dating somebody go on to like national shows.
100%.
Okay, and direct from Moscow, Russia, the mad Russian himself, the king of reinsurance, Max Zanan. Hi, Max.
Hey, Jim, it's good to be here.
Where are you today?
I am in Spain, and holy moly, this is show number 99.
Crazy.
Oh my gosh! So you flew back to Spain. So you're going to be in Spain for the summer?
No. I'm coming back on May 3rd. I'm going to the Agent Summit in Las Vegas. I'm moderating a panel at the Agent Summit.
That's
Okay,
2 conferences
great.
in a row, if anybody was counting. 2 conferences in a row for Max, who won't go to anybody. Somebody send me a present.
Oh, by the way, Max was a co-professor with me. We taught a class this past week at Northwood University, the automobile dealers' sons and daughters school. And Max did an excellent job. Max, I think you're going to be a permanent professor if you want to be.
I do want to be, because it was super satisfying and gratifying to do that. You know, I don't know if the kids feel the same way, but I enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
You got good feedback. Isn't it so inspiring, though, to teach those kids? I love it every single time.
Yeah.
I'm glad you did.
Incredible.
Okay, down to the subject we're here to talk about, manufacturer overreach. Now, we've talked about the manufacturers. My personal opinion, I always separate facts from opinions. My personal opinion is they're way out of their ballpark, especially Ford separating into 2 corporations. the EV push, very unrealistic. We want to talk about some other manufacturers. We have really drummed forward into the ground. GM, some of the imports. Ted, what are you seeing on the national scale as far as Florida is concerned?
Well, in terms of Overreach in general or General Motors?
Let's start out with generalities.
I'm sorry?
Let's start out with the generalities and we'll get specific.
Yeah. I'm like you, Jim. I'm not as long in this business as you folks on the phone probably. I'm only 21 years. But I've just witnessed such a change in attitudes. It's kind of like a convergence after COVID, a convergence of COVID with supply chain, with EV evolutions all coming together. And it just created this explosion of idea change at the OEM level. And, you know, I guess I've always heard from dealers that every time we have a good market, the OEMs peer over the fence into the backyard of the dealership and go, looks good over there. I think I'll dive in when they're not looking and grab some of that. And I think that's what we're experiencing truly is this desire for them to get into the, look, our dealers are making money. I'm not ashamed of that. Nobody on this call is ashamed of good capital, our economy and what we're able to do as dealers. But there's just this intrusion going on. And the idea that cars are somehow the powertrain of the car should suggest that there's a different way to sell it, that boggles my mind because nobody sells better than my guys and gals. And there is no system better than the franchise system.
That's the thing. I feel they're trying to bust the franchise system. What do you think, Bob?
Well, as we spoke in previously, first off, I would just like to say that 21 years, Ted looks fantastic for being 39 years old.
Correct.
Yeah, well, the cream, night cream. That does.
Right.
And secondly,
So
we all got to go with those
moisturize.
pockets.
Let me back up from the camera.
There you go. Here's a full shot.
But I would say, though, that I think there's a bigger issue. I think we're getting it from two sides, and I think they're in cahoots together. But it's really biting them in the backside. I think that you've got to look at the federal government in cahoots with the manufacturers on the overreach of trying to tell consumers what they should be buying. Consumers,
Absolutely.
Consumers have made it clear that they're slow on the uptake on the EVs, whether it's the cost, whether it's lack of charging capabilities, whether it's charge times, whether it's distance traveled. You know, there's a host of hurdles that the buying public have to get over in order to feel comfortable with the EVs. And clearly, I think the manufacturers made a baseline decision several years ago to go on this all EV kick as a way to preclude the feds from throwing more stringent emissions requirements at them. And lo and behold, it bites them in the backside because as of last Thursday, the Biden administration announced a whole range of extreme emission rules that the manufacturers of cars, trucks, heavy duty are going to have to meet to comply to be on the road as an ICE vehicle. And so the consumer is getting it from both sides. The dealer is getting it from both sides. The dealers are in the position of trying to sell the vehicles that consumers want. And this, all in on EV stuff is for the birds because the consumer keeps getting left behind here. The dealer needs to provide a vehicle to a consumer, whether it's a business, whether it's a mom and dad, whether it's a single woman who just needs a smaller car to get back and forth from work, whatever the need may be, the feds and the manufacturers are preventing dealers from meeting that consumer need properly. And I think that bigger problem is when you start getting into how that, as Ted rose the issue, how you're going to get into retailing those vehicles, then you start getting into offshoots. But it's really, to me, what's driving this is government wants to drive people's personal habits in a different direction, and the manufacturers feel they're going to buy into that as a way to avoid some other obligations and take it out on the dealer.
Jennifer?
Well, I'm just going to piggyback off of what Bob said, because I feel like I'm constantly standing on a soapbox talking about how fair market trade is supposed to work, right? The consumer is supposed to dictate what the market is doing. And what we've been seeing more and more and more is what I straight out call market manipulation. They are, just like Bob said, they're trying to dictate and say, okay, this is what you have to do. And I would talk about this all the time. I live I just moved, so it's not as rural as it used to be, but EVs are just not an option for every consumer.
Not in rural Michigan, no.
Not even anywhere. It's supposed to be a choice. And let's not forget that if we are going to say that we are doing this because of carbon footprints, let's please be honest about where the majority of electricity is generated from in this country, because coal is not cleaner than gasoline.
Okay, Jason, jump in here.
Sorry.
I love this topic, right? But I'm actually going to take it from the marketing side, right? Look, manufacturers are notoriously known for marketing vehicles that we cannot sell. And this seems to be another one of those scenarios. Let's market something that's cool and exciting that consumers might drive some interest about, but won't ultimately, a very small percentage will ultimately actually end up owning it. So I think the oversight, again, to Ted's point, is those manufacturers trying to tell us, how to do business. And, ultimately the dealers, they have the experience on what to sell, how to sell, and what to market. And again, this is just another example of the manufacturer putting their foot in and saying, "No, let me tell you what you should do." So, but I like EV vehicles personally for myself. It works for me. All right. I understand that's not for everyone.
It doesn't. We're going to talk about the agency model in a minute. But now we're still in generalities. Max, where are you at on this?
Listen, it's simple, guys. There's market interference, right, that we should not be having. This is emissions elsewhere, meaning in Africa, right, and not in America, and not in Western Europe. This is also a convergence of woke ideology in the government and in the OEMs.
You and that word.
Which will ultimately lead to increased taxation of internal combustion vehicles. It's crystal clear, right? Because the goal of selling 100% electric by 2035 in the state of New York or in the state of California is undoable. It's a fantasy. But in return, you will get an additional layer of taxation if you choose to drive an internal combustion vehicle. And
Max, as soon as the government put a $7,500 tax credit, the manufacturers went up $7,500 on all their hot selling EVs.
Of course.
The manufacturers, as Ted pointed out earlier, they slurped up that additional profit as soon as they saw it.
Right.
But you think about it, the federal government is trying basically bribe people into buying something that they don't want.
Correct. And they still don't want it, even with the $7,500 credit.
You're paying people to buy a car that, depending on the poll, anywhere from 75 to 90% of the people said they would buy anyway.
Well, Farley's been photographed recently more than Elvis. I mean, he's on every talk show. He's everywhere.
Yeah, but Jim, ladies and gentlemen, we made it 15 minutes. that is progress.
I'm sorry, I took a shot at Farley.
That's all right. You know what the opposite of woke is, right? It's asleep. I'm glad to see you awake.
I got to look. Can I say this? Since you broke the ice, I got to look at his pillowcase the other night. I don't want to tell you how I found out about it, but it's a picture of Elon Musk, and he puts his head down every evening.
I want to know how you got a picture of it. We're going to talk later.
They are definitely chasing Elon, aren't they?
Oh my!
I call it a man crush, man,
Right.
because it doesn't make business sense. It doesn't. And this is one part where Max and I disagree. Max thinks it's all about woke. I think it's about a man crush.
Well,
It's both.
I think he wants to
I
be
think it's
Elon.
both.
She thinks he's thirsty.
But don't you think? Don't you think the
there's an
OEM?
there's an automotive version of woke.
You're not trapping me into that conversation.
Jump in there, Ted. Bail me out.
Don't you think the OEMs are pandering to the administration just because they're really scared about CAFE and how they will ever meet those numbers? So if you go the whole EV route, you kind of you take the bullseye off, basically, right? Because you produce enough EV cars, it's not an issue. And if you tell everybody you're going to drive EVs, then you don't have the CAFE, that cloud looming over the business, and how we're going to manufacture ICE cars to meet the demands of this government. You're not going to be able to do it. So I think that's leading a lot of this conversation in Washington.
Well, let's go right down the line. General Motors. Where does this panel believe General Motors is exercising overreach beyond their stated mandate? 100 years ago, Henry Ford rode all around the country, signing up every garage owner and every blacksmith to be a Ford dealer. Made lifetime commitments to these people's ancestors. And all of a sudden, they invested in the manufacturers, the General Motors dealers, the Stellantis, Chrysler, whatever the heck they call themselves nowadays. The Stellantis dealers, the General Motors dealers, the domestic, the three that we consider to be domestics, all of them were rooted in the dealership model. They were friends with their dealers.
Let me address this by saying I don't think we have to look at it individually, because I think they're all in cahoots with it together. For someone to suggest that they don't talk, the thing that ticks me off, Ted and I go to these meetings, and what do? They spend 5 minutes giving us these antitrust talks and telling us we can't talk about X, Y, and Z, and we can't do this, that, and everything else. The manufacturers are doing it all together. They have their meetings, they have their group think, without saying it. But when a manufacturer creates a marketing scheme to try to get a hold of dealers' used vehicle inventory, that they're not doing that as a way to improve dealer operations. They're doing that as a way to get a finger in the money pot that the dealers have in terms of their own used vehicle inventory. And when you have manufacturers trying to set up online ordering schemes that are going to bypass the dealer, when you have manufacturers setting up who's going to dictate what the trade-in price is going to be, and when you have manufacturers changing on the fly what they're going to reimburse as they dictate for warranty reimbursement or recall reimbursement, they all do it. I can't sit here and just take shots at individual manufacturers, because they're all doing the same things, but in different
I disagree. Now we're going to take this conversation down to the agency model in a minute, and I believe that there are manufacturers that are more committed to the agency model. Say Volvo or some of the imports, especially Stellantis is committed in Europe to going to the agency model, which is completely eliminating the dealers. And we're headed that direction in a minute. So, when we talk about overreach, we're not just talking about EVs and EV mandates. We're talking about everything they're doing now. Ganther's out to jumping up and down on the sidelines. Jim Ganther, attorney, really great.
He's always got good stuff in there.
A really great compliance expert, but he's saying, what do state associations have to do with these national issues? And he's like a little puppy turning circles, going to pee any minute. He's so excited. And
everybody loves a puppy, Jim. Can I just say real quick, isn't it ironic? Does anybody else find it ironic that we talk about the $7,500 like it's a huge thing, when 3 years ago, that was the normal on every car. $7,500 in rebates. Wasn't even a year-end
Well,
clearance.
we're
It was like,
getting
it is
that
a
way
Tuesday
again,
in
Bobbie.
June. We're $7,500 off on a Tuesday in June just because we can. And now we talk about it like, oh, there's this massive amount they're driving towards it that's going to just like cripple a market and manipulate everything. And it's so ironic.
Everybody's doing that again, Bobbie. That's bad.
Right. Well, right. So I'm just saying, like, you know, all things considered, $7,500 isn't a big enough incentive, I wouldn't say, to get somebody to completely shift the dynamic in which they use their vehicle in their life.
No, but if they take that a few steps further to tax penalties instead of tax credits for consumers driving ICE vehicles,
Sure.
that is a whole different ball.
Oh, it's a whole different ball of wax.
They're not above that
hypothetical.
Jason,
not.
you're jumping up and down like Gather over there. What do you want to say?
Well, I just think, oversights, look, it covers a lot more than just what we can sell and how we can sell it. There's oversights on what we can market and how we can market. There's oversights of, well, you signed a franchise agreement. My brand is actually more important than your brand. And that's always been a battle, for many, many years. There's oversights in what technologies a dealership can use. And we talk about some monster legacy companies in this industry that, honestly provide subpar technology and subpar experiences, but because of the oversights and the agreements they have with those OEMs, we're tied, at the arms to utilize. I mean, the people wonder, like, why is the automotive consumer experience hasn't evolved? I mean, these oversights, control and kind of keep that experience down so that we're never, as an individual dealership, able to kind of step outside of the box and test and try what a new consumer experience is. But I find sometimes, like this EV thing, it's kind of like, I call it jazz fingers. It's like, look over here, look over here. Don't pay attention to what I'm doing over here and how I'm controlling, your marketing efforts, your technology efforts, your experience efforts. I'm going to control your operations. I'm going to tell you how to sell a car, right? Look over here, look over here.
Not only that, Jason, but built to order. General Motors and Ford especially. And who is the beneficiary? Kia and Hyundai and Nissan. I mean, the people that aren't doing built to order. The public's not going to wait a year for a standard stock vehicle. They'll wait for a custom ordered dually Ford truck.
Yeah.
They'll wait for that. They'll order a custom vehicle, but they're not going to order something and wait a year for a standard equipped.
Right. Now they're trying to get back and forth to work. That's what most Americans are trying to do. We're talking about the difference between need buyers and want buyers. And again, we can't dictate what we do for a small percentage. But Bob, I saw something there and I want to make sure to.
I just was going to say, there's a bigger picture too that people sometimes miss. These vehicles are so complicated now and being computers on wheels. Just like if you do a Google search for a particular restaurant or particular shoes or golf clubs, you start getting messaging over and over again every time you're on the computer about these things. If you saw the story yesterday where GM is now going to wipe out the Go Play app for their vehicles, and there's a number of apps that consumers depend on in their vehicle for phone calls, for GPS, and that's it, really. They want to monetize more toward their liking various information that's in the vehicle, as well as messaging to the consumer who's in the car. So that if you're driving by a certain block of stores, they can send you an ad for, Joe Pizza or Sam's Shoes. They want to get into more monetizing and playing with the innards of the vehicle as it's now hitting you as you're driving or as you're communicating in the vehicle. And, that's another way that they're kind of going to bypass dealers, especially if they start getting into more and more communications directly with consumers and start doing online repairs, over-the-air tweaks. And, that'd be one other way that they're trying to monetize their vehicles and the information flowing through the vehicles and bypass dealers.
Well, let me ask you a question. I'm going to ask the two dealer association gentlemen on the broadcast. What do we think about manufacturers saying that dealers don't have the right to sell everything that all the other dealers sell? All of a sudden, you have to earn the right to sell certain pieces of inventory. Ted, take that.
Well, we don't know what this over-the-air thing is going to look like. We really don't. I think everybody understands that we may see, we hear talk about the base car and all these toggling on and off of products and services and features and
subscription services. Quit it.
I mean, can you imagine? I tell you, the way we're discussing that now, we have a piece of legislation in the Florida legislature, and we're talking about over the air, and we're trying to deal with a subject that nobody really understands. We know what it looks like today. We're not sure what it's going to look like tomorrow. But there's far more insidious things going on as far as I'm concerned, though. Our OEM partners say that they support dealerships, but then they attack allocation, setting the retail price, trying to handle trades online with digital retail platforms, trying to take control of the sale of aftermarket products. So rather than talking about over-the-air stuff, it's that those are the most important tenets of the franchise system and what makes it work.
Being able to
take those away from the dealer, what do we have?
Well, and you look at like at the core of all these oversights, what is the fight? It's the fight, and Bob, you were alluding to it. It's the fight over who has the relationship with the customer. Does the dealer have the relationship with the customer, or does the manufacturer have the relationship over the customer? And I look at all these oversights, and every single one is just an example of them trying to fight over just a little bit more. No, I know it's my relationship. No, it's my relationship. No, it's my relationship. And it's this constant back and forth. This is the wholesale retail at its best. It's who owns the relationship.
Well, the bottom line is
the dealer owns the relationship. The OEM has proven time and time again they can't manage that.
These manufacturers are arguing with that, right? That's how they're arguing with it, with these oversights.
It's abusive, Jason.
Guys, at the end of the day, all these arguments are valid only because there's an inventory shortage.
Is Max agreeing with everyone? Hold on.
Can somebody write that down? Can somebody get a screenshot of this? Chelsea, can you video that clip, please?
But all I'm saying is that all these arguments are valid only if there's an inventory shortage. Once we go back to pre-pandemic level of inventory, when we have more cars than buyers, OEM has no ground to stand on, right? And if they think they do, dealers will do the same thing they've always done. They will use the new car shingle for the sole purpose of signing up the banks and selling used cars.
The banks are backing out of the market. The banks are withdrawing. If you look at the banks,
Capital One news was crazy.
The banks are getting out of the car business. And I mean,
but there will be new banks that will be entering the car business because this is a normal progression of things in car business, right?
Yeah, but the inventory shortage, I think, yes, it has definitely created an exponential impact. But like Jason was saying, this isn't anything new. They've been trying to dictate what CRM you can use and what advertising companies. And if you've ever been on the side where you've actually negotiated a partnership deal with an OEM, the type of markup they put on it. So here we sit here and we talk about dealers' advertising efforts, and I'm not under any type of contract that I can't say that out loud, and I have been in those rooms.
Yeah,
where you take a perfectly great product that's wonderful and efficient, you negotiate a partnership, and then boom, okay, here we go. Or you know what? We want to reduce our cost, keep the price the same, so let's take away these features. And it's locking things, and it's not good for the consumer. It's not good for the dealer. And I have been saying that for years. I fought General Motors tooth and nail when they started mandating and dictating this BDC stuff. First of all, I had the best closing rates of any General Motors stores on internet sales in the country. I didn't say it out loud. I mouthed it.
That's
And they want to
all.
come in and tell me I got to go 10 years back and sign up. So, and I'm not going to name the names of the companies because I compete against them now, and that wouldn't be ethical. But I was like, are you kidding me?
No, but it's
You're
always
gonna
like that.
force me to go backwards for the experience for my team,
Yeah.
cost my team money in commissions because they're not going to sell as many cars, and have a bad experience for my customer. It's not new. It's just worse.
No,
Jump in there,
it's
Bobbie.
always like that. Well, that's, to go off of piggyback just for a second off of what Jennifer just said. Listen, I go to meetings with clients all the time, to their dealer launch meetings, and with their state reps and with their OEM. And I can tell you, I've been kicked out of more than a handful for asking the questions of the popularity person standing in front of me rather than what's supposed to be beneficial to the dealer. Because it's real easy to be like, hey, we're going to approve this product, or we're going to do this, we're going to maintain that money, and then strip out everything that made it great, to the point where all of that funding that came from the OEM then now dictates the ones that aren't funded by the OEM. And it's the same thing with where we talk about EV, and I've been kind of quiet through the show going through on this because everybody knows my stance on it, right? Give the consumer what they want, all the options. That's my stance on it. But I will say I am a little concerned about the lack of technology that will be in the vehicle, because I understand that GM came out and said, well, CarPlay was set to announce, they announced back in 2022 that they would be able to control things like seats and climate control and that kind of jazz. And now, boom, it's getting ready to launch, and we're pulling that back. But undercover, they're saying, hey, this is to streamline so that all of the automation in the vehicle and all of the potential autonomous driving isn't affected by a third-party app. Except they're partnering with Google, which is the number one source of data. It's insane that nobody, in my opinion, everybody's way less concerned about what they should be concerned about, because that type of data in one powerhouse is dangerous. And so we can fight EV cars and we can do the whole thing, but I'm saying AI released at its strongest, just a couple months ago here, and it's learning every day. There's danger involved in that. It should be something that we're concerned about, and it should be something we're concerned about for the customer. I can already automate something to show up to any one of you and talk you into anything that you didn't even know I was talking you into 10 minutes after this show, to trail you around for the next 6 months, and it'll cost me $43. And it'll just be fun. Can you imagine your car that hears and sees and is involved in all of your GPS? Every single app you have is integrated. I'm even more concerned that they went so far as to say the Blazer, I think it was, they said, would still have Bluetooth, which kind of implies that the rest won't. So just like, maybe we get ahead of these companies that get ahead of us by focusing on things that are up and coming and could actually be a potential disaster. That's where my concern comes in.
Bob Okoniewski. Bob, the agency model. Now, some of the manufacturers are experimenting with it in Europe. Manufacturers are being sued in Australia for going to the agency model, but they seemed dead set on operating the stores, reducing square footage down to 1,500 square feet. These fools think they're going to strap an Oculus on people and sell cars in the metaverse. And
isn't it interesting that those are the requirements for them under an agency model, but for dealers, those facility requirements were a whole lot more pricey.
Yeah, and I mean, Oculuses are so 2021.
Go Bob.
No, I'm just going to pick up on the point that was just made. Is there's still manufacturers that are thrusting, facility requirements on dealers when the PR is you're going to order online, you're going to have it delivered somewhere, whether it's the dealership or the person's house. You're going to have less vehicles to have on site for test drives and the such.
Is that working out?
Well, the dealers are doing very well with the lack of inventory in terms of revenue.
Are they actually delivering?
I would take a issue with Max, and I don't see them going back to pre-pandemic inventory, because for starters, the minerals they need to make these EV batteries, let's face it, even petroleum is a finite resource. It's going to run out at some point.
Not in our lifetime.
Well, I take care of myself.
Right.
Get it, Bob? That's right.
We got Ted Smith from the
but just the point, they have so much mineral requirements under the current technologies that they can't afford to produce vehicles that are just going to sit on the lot.
Right,
So
but Bob, they will go to pre-pandemic levels of internal combustion engine vehicles.
Yes, they will.
Of course they will.
Every afternoon, Bob, every afternoon I see Linda Beaver and the bow tie guy having huge discounts. They're talking about rebates. Rebates are back. I mean, as soon as market share drops, and the F-150 gets knocked down to third place, Bill Ford's going to scratch his head and say, wait a second, he's going to kick somebody through the field goals.
Yeah, but if I may, people don't realize how expensive money is. They don't realize that what the person taking the loan on that F-150 is paying the nut on based on a higher interest rate. They don't realize what that, let's say that person needs the F-150 for his business. He's an independent contractor of sorts. And they don't realize what that's taken out of the pocket of that family.
Average payment over $700, average price over 60 grand.
That's crazy. You know, pre-pandemic, you could still get an F-150 for $25,000, bare bones.
Yeah.
Right. Bob, I just looked at a Nissan's website. A fully loaded Nissan Rogue MSRP, $41,815. It's supposed to be an entry-level SUV.
Right.
That's not Ruples, right?
You know, I'll tell you what's.
Then you look at what. Let me just finish this point. But then you look at what Ford's done. They're completely out of the sedan marketplace, right? So what's the only semi type of sedan you could get would be the Mach-E Mustang, right? Everything, and that's considered, I believe, an SUV now by them.
It is.
That sucker ain't a sports car. That's for damn sure. That's not your grandfather's Mustang.
I still stand by the fact that, like, we can clone goats. The government has said that there's aliens now. Things are out of control. You are not going to convince me that there's a real situation where we can't develop a chip. You're just not. You're just not.
But are they aliens or Chinese spy balloons?
I'm still trying to figure it out. You know, I've
A lot
been
of
really
those
busy this year,
aliens
Bob.
are running the government.
Bob, I've been really busy
Anyway.
this year. I have not had time to investigate, but when I find out, I will get back to you.
Thank you.
But I can tell you off of what Max just said, I don't, and not to segue this, but I just want to throw it out there. I have been in this business for 22 years as everything from a salesperson and a porter to a operations director for a massive group. So it's not my first rodeo, but I will tell you that this week I experienced for the first time ever the attempt to purchase an adapted mobility van. Have any of you guys done this? It's a nightmare. It is insane. And the cost is a non-negotiable because it's darn near impossible to find. So I feel like this week I experienced what consumers did throughout this whole shortage, where it was like, yeah, I guess it's $6,000 over, but I'll have to take it because there's not another option. And it shocked me that it was so limited in its capacity and that the pricing was so extreme. Like $60,000 for a 2015 with 68,000 miles on it because it has a ramp. You got to be kidding me. These are things that I want to see oversight on.
So the only point I would wrap up on this point I was trying to make is if you're going to treat the manufacturers as politicians, they've clearly lost touch with their constituents, and their constituents are the dealers, right? And through the dealers to the consumers. Mm-hmm. If you were to have a referendum on manufacturers by those two constituent groups, they would be tossed out of office.
Oh, absolutely. Ted Smith, agency model.
I don't see how it works for the consumer. I just do not see how it works for the consumer. Again, you remove choice. If you control allocation and you control, if the OEM controls allocation and pricing and some of the other aspects that the dealer controls today, I think the consumer loses. And I think people are going to figure that out real fast. I mean, we're a state. Well, I'm so different from Bobo. Down here in the South, Tesla came along and all these EV companies, and we said, come on in, boys. And we didn't fight them. And I know there are fights going on across the country. You know why we didn't fight them? Because my dealers are better than they are. Our system is better than their system. And if we remove all the cars, though, and have everything done by reservations, look, reservations aren't working. goodness gracious, dealers can abuse reservation systems as well as OEMs can abuse reservation systems. It's not the best way to sell vehicles. The best way to sell vehicles is the good old Fred Flintstone way. You give the cars to the dealers and you let them sell them. It works. I believe that it works. Again, I'm a neophyte compared to you, Jim, in this business, but doggone, I'm a believer in a free marketplace. I believe that we are a regulated, open marketplace, and I believe our system works. That's what I tell legislators. We're $105 billion in revenue in the state of Florida. What a huge industry.
Ted, hold on. You don't think Tesla broke the franchise laws and you didn't fight it because you believe in open market?
We didn't fight it. There are a number of reasons we didn't fight it.
You should fight it every single day of your life.
Well,
franchise laws keep dealers in business.
I disagree. It's those kind of comments that causes us to have problems with the other side. They say your laws are antiquated. Well, you know what? Our DMV looked the other way and we looked the other way, and we allowed those three companies to come in. We're now trying to pass a piece of legislation that's going to deal with the issue and the presence of three EV companies that are operating illegally under Florida's law, because Florida's law never considered the fact that we would have EV companies without dealers. Our laws don't even address it. Well, our laws are going to address it now. We're going to allow those companies in the state of Florida. If you're reading the news and watching my governor, we're the free state of Florida, and we're in a completely open market as far as he's concerned. Most of the guys and gals in the Florida legislature can't even tolerate the concept of getting business, getting government between businesses. They don't even like the franchise model. But when they look at it, you know what they say? It's best for the consumer because competition reigns supreme in the franchise system. If you go, I've always said Tesla's like buying an Apple computer. Whatever store you want to go in America, you pay the same price. That's what you do with Teslas. But our folks compete like heck for the customer's business. And by the way, it is our customer. It's not the OEM's customer. And we compete like crazy for that business, interbrand and intra-brand. What's wrong with that? Why doesn't that work? I think it does work.
John Roberts, a Ford dealer, just commented.
There's so many things that are wrong with it. If you are a car dealer, franchise laws are sacred. They are the laws that keep you in business. And if your own state dealer association is not going to fight for your rights tooth and nail, and set the precedent by allowing Tesla sell direct to consumer, because that precedent will be taken by Ford, by GM, and by everybody else. Ted, you and I don't agree at all on this subject.
Okay.
Don't worry, Ted. It's usually me that he disagrees with.
Good conversation though, because the whole goal here, right, is to get dealers to come to their associations.
Bobbie, let me point out. Yeah. John Roberts, Ford dealer. I've got his comment on the screen. Everybody take that comment, starting at Jason. Jason, what do you derive from John's? John's a pretty prolific guy online.
Oh no, I mean, but this is kind of what we've been talking about, like who ultimately owns the relationship and who needs to reap the benefits, the monetary benefits of having that relationship. No, manufacturers, they wouldn't do that. They wouldn't take that extra time, but that's why branding is it's a free market, right? The brands that I choose to do business with and the brands that I choose to give my money to on a monthly basis, or it are the ones that I have chosen based on what benefit or value or perceived value that they bring to me.
You're a Tesla owner, aren't you?
No, I'm a Rivian owner.
He's Rivian.
Okay.
He was going to be like, no.
I knew you were a communist.
I like my 3-row electric SUV that I can off-road in and has 800 horsepower. It's literally the Swiss Army.
And you have the means to put a charging station in your home.
Yes, I do.
And do all of those things.
Well, he has the means. That's the subject, and all humor aside,
Well,
Jane
I think
Roberts,
one,
And I
Jennifer,
think you
a
also,
comment on
if you're
Jane
going to go
Roberts.
that route, I think you also have to have the means to have your own repair facility in your garage, because if something goes wrong or if there's a warranty or a recall situation, you're going to be waiting forever to get that thing repaired.
right? Yeah, there we
Well,
go.
and it's
Listen,
another
Jason,
reason why it's not my primary vehicle. You know, I could have chosen a 66 T-Bird. It had the similar situation to it. And instead, I went with a brand new
Right.
800.
Repair cost.
You're a want
Repair
buyer.
cost. Let me tell you about repair cost a second, Jason. My wife backed out, and she backed into one of the step posts
Oh, don't you go telling on Miss Debbie.
with our brand new
Rounded.
Lincoln Aviator. Okay, it just cracked the tail light polycarbonate lens. It didn't break the tail light.
Allegedly, Debbie did it.
Guess how much the replacement's going to be? $1,100.
Yeah, I was going to say 12.
I mean, so repair cost. Bob brought that up, but back to Overreach a second.
Well, I think one of the key things when we're talking about the agency model and again, Ted, you and I might be the babies at 21 years in the business and the show here, but I was always taught and trained that sales sells the first car and service sells all the rest. And since the average American consumer purchases 13 vehicles in their lifetime, we're barely talking about they can online ordering all this crap. What about servicing? And I think one of the other things too is, as dealers, you have to understand, and this is because I started in accounting, you need to understand your profit centers and know where people have their hands in the pot more than others, because you ultimately have to control the bottom line of that statement. So if we're talking about agency model on the front end, we've got changing warranty, and I know impending warranty audits. There are going to be a lot of those rolling across the country because the OEM's got to get their money. But it's frustrating because from a consumer standpoint, that relationship always has been with the dealer, and it's not just for the sale. And maybe I still have a little bitter taste in my mouth being a General Motors dealer through the last recession and watching what happened, headquartered out of Saginaw, Michigan, and all the plants closing and everybody getting laid off. And I'm still bitter.
How do you, hey, Jennifer, how does a corporation lose $32 billion in less than a decade? And even face us and say that they are good operators?
It's a wonderful question,
well, because you get a professional management class. You have a professional management class, right? These people are hired to be managers. They're not punished for lack of the performance. There is no clawback clause on Wall Street or in OEMs, right? And this is the difference between Elon Musk and everybody else, right? Because he has real skin in the game, whether it's Twitter, Tesla, SpaceX, you know, that's the problem. But I also want to go back to saying, you know, elaborating on my previous point about setting precedent. You now have Volkswagen saying that they're going back to the United States with a Scout brand as a separate company, right? And you need to know how to read between the lines, right? It's going to be a separate company with a separate listing on a stock exchange.
I wanted to get into that today. That's where I wanted this conversation to go.
So Jim, let me translate from English to English. Right? You know what that means? That means direct to consumer. Otherwise, you don't need a separate stock listing and you don't need a separate company. So the dealer associations that were completely asleep when Tesla broke the franchise laws are the cause of this disaster.
Farley's doing that with Ford. What's the difference? He doesn't have the answer to the franchise laws because it's an EV. Tesla has set the precedent.
Right. You're making my point for me. The dealer associations that chose not to fight Tesla are responsible for this.
So can I throw something out real quick before we segue? Let me just throw something out here.
Well,
in this conversation, for the dealers that are listening, right? All of you, whether you're in sales, you're in BDC.
Dealers are not angry enough.
And that's not even it. It's that we can't just give them what's wrong instead of not what to do with it. And one of the things we've distinguished that's wrong within dealer associations that's hard for them is that people don't know where to go to the resource. So before the end of this show, I would love to see the two of you tell the people in your states and that you oversee these things for how they can help you fight things like this, because we need to start to bring awareness on how to fix it and not just how to have the conversation.
And the other thing is, we had Mike Stanton on here not long ago, and NADA. And one thing we need to do is get more lower level management involved in the associations. When I went to, when I keynote speak at some of these conventions, I haven't spoken at a convention in 7 years, but I was a keynote speaker for 98 state dealer conventions. And as the keynote speaker for 98 state dealer conventions, Bob, I think I did yours 4 or 5 times before you even, you know,
clearly almost 10% of that total.
Yeah. I mean, that it is. I mean, but the people at the conventions that in the states and national are the old timers. We got to get more youth involved in this thing.
Well, it's just not just the youth, because let's be honest, the dealer principal has a lot more cushion. But a lot of the things that are coming down, whether it's government overreach or it's OEM overreach, are ultimately going to affect the employees in the community. Because if I got to cut costs, what's the first place they usually cut costs? Staff. So we talk about this. We have all of these people who really have a lot to say, and they have a lot invested in that company, in that community as well, with no voice or no idea of how to even find out what's going on, get involved, show up, do something.
Yeah.
They have no clue, because all of the email blasts go to the dealer principal.
Yeah. And we need to focus on that. Like we've talked about this before. Bobbie, you and I have talked about this several times. Like we absolutely have to be making sure that we promote at every opportunity the way for somebody who doesn't know how to start a conversation to start it and to find out about these things. Otherwise, everybody's a lone man on a ship just trying to make a difference. And it's not enough. Right.
We're all working harder, not smarter.
Jump in here, Jason. Jason, jump in.
I've just been kind of watching Ted's body language, and I know he's got a few things he wants to say. So, but like I think everyone brings an incredibly good point, you know. And when it comes to overreach, you know, we need to get just plumb dog mad crazy. Just, you know, our voices need to be, you know, louder about it. But you know, those voices aren't so loud when, you know, our operations have been more profitable in the last few years than they ever have been.
I don't see the dealers angry enough.
I agree, but that's also, you know, what I call that full belly syndrome. You know, I'm pretty full right now.
I mean, it is.
And you know, when I'm not so full and I'm a little bit hungry, you're going to hear more of that noise. You know, but I mean, and I hate to say Mac's right, to a certain point, this is the time that has to happen. We can't wait until inventory levels come back up and we start seeing margins. Well, margins already begin to decrease, but we start seeing, you know, our cost per transaction start to go down, you know, to start getting angry. The conversations need to happen now.
I've been angry for a long time, Jason.
Well, and I don't know if it's fair to say the dealers aren't angry enough. Everybody that's on this show right now, not one of us is tied into a negotiation or a contract that says that we have to play politically well in the sandbox in public. But for those of them that are angry, there's behind the scenes conversations, I'm sure. Do I think it's enough? I don't know. It doesn't seem like it, but I don't have any facts to support that. But playing politically well in the sandbox isn't going to be as easy for every one of them as it is for us, because we can come on here and MF whoever we want, but their hands are tied on some of those conversations, including what's up and coming for their own stores.
Well, you know, Jim, I've been an association guy my whole career. I've never really had a real job. Right out of college, I went to work for an association, and I've got this lovely expression that I like to share, and it's rich members are happy members. And our members right now are very profitable. They're they're making a lot of money, but are they happy? No. Every night when they put their head down on the pillow, they have to go, what is my partner doing? Are they just peering over the fence, or are they jumping in to my ball game, in straight up into my lane, trying to challenge whether or not this business is going to survive, either for my son or my successor, or my daughter or my successor? You know, there are real challenges out there. Here's how I measure their degree of unhappiness, though. It is their willingness to get involved with us when we go to the legislature. And Max, you may not like what we're doing, but I'm telling you, I'm engaging my members like never before. They are hot and bothered, and they are helping. And one way I know that is we play in politics, and politics is about relationships and money. And they're giving that money they're earning to us to employ it for change in the legislature. And I don't want to get too deep into that, but everybody knows what I'm talking about. It takes money to play in politics today. It is very much a transactional game. So we have to, I watch what they're doing, and I know they care because I'm watching what they're willing to invest in us at FADA to help change the minds and educate, really not change minds, just educate people about what the best system is. I continue to say the best system is the franchise system. That doesn't mean, as others are saying, that you ought to put up a door and close their entry into a state. I don't believe in that. I just don't believe in that economic theory. I believe in open competition and let the strongest survive. I think our system's still the best. And I think our dealers are adapting to it. I'm really proud of how they're adapting.
But Ted, what's the point of franchise laws then if you believe in open market?
Because the franchise
Why
law,
have them?
they allow us to have a competitive delivery of products and services to the consumer.
Some, but not
without those franchise laws. If you think that if you want to walk into a store as a consumer and ask for a goodwill warranty at a Tesla store, you're going to get one answer. At one of my dealers, you're going to get a completely different answer if the person answering the question is owned by the factory. I believe that. I think the consumer advocacy role of the dealer is still important today.
Okay, let's go around. We got 4 minutes or less than 4 minutes. Jason, your closing remarks today.
My closing remarks. Get mad.
Okay, you used up 10 seconds for your closing remarks. Okay, that gives Jennifer an extra 20 seconds. Go, Jennifer.
My closing statements are: it is your business as a dealer. And this is what I say all the time, you've got to make sure that you're standing up. It's not just about you as a dealer principal. It's about your team. It is about your community. And if we see the erosion that this overreach is going to cause, there are going to be massive, and I'm telling you again, this is going back to the bitterness from 2009. I saw communities, and Bobbie, we were competitors in the same market at that point in time. It was devastating to the economy of Michigan. And this freaks me out because I am seeing
it's coming back. It's coming back. You know, it's coming back. Oh, Ganther's going to try to buy you a drink at the Governor's Club this Friday.
I love you, Jim. I'll see you there, buddy.
Yeah, Ganther's been on the show quite a few times. He's the foremost compliance attorney in my world anyway. Let me see. Bobbie, you got 30 seconds. What you got?
I don't even need it. I would just tell you, this is why I think sometimes I'm surprised women don't run the world. I'm not going to swear. I'm just going to tell you this. You have to stand up.
I thought you already did.
You have to, you know what I mean? Well, we do, kind of ish. But you've got to stand up and fight for things in certain situations, because temporary situations turn into permanent problems if you don't stand up to try to resolve them. So I can't stress it enough that everybody that's out there, regardless of your position in a dealership, you should be in the know with anything that's going on with your association, and you should be a part of it. And if you're not, then when jobs change and when things happen, you don't get to stand up and whine about it in your little outside union cigarette break meetings. It doesn't work that way. Jim, no Pappy, that's weak.
That's Pappy. That's 23-year-old Pappy. That's a $4,000 bottle down about $1,000. Yeah, but it's a $4,000 bottle. Is this what you're talking about?
Did we drink that halfway down? I think we might have.
Yeah. No, we were on the cognac.
I was on both.
Club can't even afford that booze.
No, you were on the $5,000 bottle of Louis XIII.
James says challenge accepted. No, for serious though, we can talk about this all the time and every week, but we pound this into everybody and we talk about it so often that it drives even us crazy, but it's so that you will get out there and use your voices before your checkbooks don't have numbers in them to write anymore.
Okay, so as we get down to the last minute, I'll have the last word. We didn't get half of the subjects I wanted to get on the show, but it was damned entertaining today. Ted Smith, Bob Okoniewski, thank you for being here today. You guys,
Thanks, guys.
You're always welcome back on the show, and I love it when we have experts like you. Max is a curmudgeon. He lives under a log, and you can expect it.
Max is a representative of all the other dealers in the country who don't speak up for themselves, so he challenges things so that we can have open collaboration.
Under a bridge and eats goats.
But the association exists to speak.
Okay, everybody wave goodbye. Everybody wave goodbye to the audience.